I'm working on a Chevy. I just noticed that we're color coordinated. It's an 05 Silverado 2500 HD. This is the truck that I put the turbo on twice because I screwed up and had a leak in the gasket. Anyway, I put a wheel bearing on it a while back and I noticed that the brake lines were getting pretty scabby. A 20-year-old GM truck. It's amazing it's gotten this far. So we're going to replace the brake lines. All of the brake lines. And I don't know if it's possible to make an interesting or even watchable video about replacing brake lines, but we're going to find out. He also said the Hydro Boost is leaking. That's this gizmo right here. So normally you'd have a vacuum brake booster or brake servo, but this is a diesel engine. It doesn't have a throttle body, so there's no manifold vacuum. And even if there was, it's got a turbocharger, so it actually has positive manifold pressure. So they use the Hydro Boost to take pressure from the power steering pump and give you power brakes. And it's been replaced once before. I don't think it's leaking. At least it doesn't look like it. But I do see, I think the hose is leaking. So there's two pressure hoses. One comes from the pump to the Hydro Boost, and then one goes from the Hydro Boost down to the steering gear. Kind of looks like they're both leaking. So we might want to do that while we're here. That'll be fun. Not much room in this engine bay. Yeah, there's no good way to do this job, but I'll show you the way that I do it. It's the best way that I've found. Here's the secret. The Dorman, stay with me, pre-formed brake line kit. In this box are all the brake lines. They're bent, they're flared, and they're made from stainless steel. This is the only way to go, especially on these GM trucks. As soon as one brake line goes, it's going to be like whack-a-mole. They're just going to keep popping, and you're going to have to keep replacing them. You might as well just do them all and get it over with. Now, I noticed in recent years they've cheaped these out a little bit. They used to come with stainless steel nuts, but now they're just galvanized steel. It's still way better than steel. It's at least as good as NICOP. These brake lines will outlast the truck, for sure. I put a prop on the brake pedal. Hopefully it'll keep the master cylinder from dripping the whole time we're working. Of course, now the brake lights are on. So we'll chase the rodents out of the fuse box and pull the tail light fuse. That guy right there. I don't know if I've ever seen one of these trucks that didn't have evidence of rodents on top of the fuses. I mean, look at that entrance hole. Might as well fill the thing with cheese. Typically the hardest part, well, I shouldn't say that. A hard part is dealing with the bleeders. This truck's almost 20 years old. It's got over 200,000 miles. I guarantee these bleeders have never been touched. And they are not going to come loose without a fight. So we're not even going to try without some heat. So I like the heat and quench method, just to try and shock it loose. Usually works pretty good. Oh, I think we got a chance. Oh yeah. All right. That one's good. 3 more to go. The front ones look really nasty. I've seen theories that you should tighten the bleeder first and then try to loosen it. Never really found it to make much difference. Oh, there we go. Okay. We're in good shape on the rear. I don't know about this one. There's no hex left. Oh, I think it's gonna go. Oh yeah. Look at that. Nothing to it. All right, we're doing good so far. Oh yeah, it's gonna go. Look at that. Okay, nothing to it. Now it might be a good idea to just go ahead and replace all of those bleed screws. I mean, they only cost a few cents a piece. Should be nice for the next guy who has to work on this, which is probably gonna be me. All right, we're gonna start with an easy one. Kind of warm up a little bit. So here's what I do. There's no reason to try and save them. Everything's getting replaced. And I've got a drain pan, but there's only so much you can do. This is a messy job. Struck some pretty good shape. Normally all these loom clamps are rotted out. Got to use a bunch of zip ties. You know, the usual stuff. Okay, there's the first one. These are even labeled. It says rear axle line, driver's side to rear caliper. That's pretty handy. And then I like to put a little bit of anti-seize just above the flare and then on the threads of the flare nut. It's been my observation with these stainless brake lines, you got to tighten them pretty tight, like tighter than you're used to, or else they will leak. I don't know if it's just something with how they flare them or what the deal is. Also, don't be surprised if you have to bend them a little bit. They're usually not perfect, but it's a whole lot better than doing it yourself. Well, maybe I'm the only one who's ever had this problem, but I like to go until I think they're tight and then go a little more. All right, good enough. That's pretty much the process. I'm not going to show you all the gory details. You got to straighten out these longer lines. They bend them so it's easier to ship them. This is probably the hardest one to install because it has to go along the frame rail beside the fuel tank. The one that goes across the front is also not very much fun. I'm going to try going in from the outside. Underneath that.
Oh yeah, that's it. Oh, so close. That is not fun. Okay, so I had to unbend the bend to get that through, so now I have to rebend the bend.
The rear axle is done. I got that long line clipped into the original clips. Looks pretty good. The only problem I had, for whatever reason, it was just a little bit too long. So I just bent a little jog to take up that extra length. It's pretty normal. Like I said, they're pre-bent, but they're not perfect. So our next move is to install the long line that goes out to the right side front caliper. That guy right there. And it's almost as difficult. So I did go ahead and take off the left front wheel and the inner fender liner. We're going to have that off there anyway to get the lines that go up to the master cylinder. So it's got to go up over this arch in the frame and around all the charge air cooler tubes and wiring harnesses, and there's a lot going on in this section of the truck.
Okay, that wasn't so bad. Of course, it's not clipped in yet. Pretty close though.
I don't know what your deal is. All right, the front axle is done. This one here on the driver's side took quite a bit of manhandling. I don't know exactly why. Doesn't matter. So now we just need to do the two lines that go up to the master cylinder. And I don't know if I mentioned this specifically, but I like to do these one at a time, just so I don't get things mixed up, because all the lines end up going into the ABS unit there, and they're not marked. Right, Max? Even though I literally just said I like to do these one at a time, I'm going to do the two that go to the master cylinder at the same time, because it's a little easier. So the front one's on the outside. Hopefully I can keep that straight. I don't know, this front line's actually touching the fuse box. I tried to bend it a little bit, but then it hits the power steering hose. I don't know. I mean, it's got clearance, so I guess it's okay. The brake lines are done. Everything is properly routed and loomed and looks good. Like I said, it's not too hard to get them to run from point A to point B. The hard part is getting them to fit back into those factory looms and making them, look good and not rub against each other. It took me about 6 hours to install the brake lines, not counting the bleeders. And that's about the fastest I've ever done. The rustier they are, the worse it gets. And this truck's really not too bad. So let's move on to those power steering hoses. Remember last week when I was working on that Dodge with a gas V8? And it was so nice because there's all this extra space in the front of the engine. This truck is basically the opposite of that.
whatever space there was taken up by the charge air cooler tubes and charge air cooler itself. An extra battery cables. All the fun stuff that comes along with a diesel. Okay, I think that's loose. Alright. Got the line loose at the pump and the line loose at the gear. So it should just be the two connections up at the Hydro Boost. You can do that from the top. Oh, I think there's a clamp on that one I gotta take off. Why does every single hose and brake line have to be shaped like a hook? Doesn't make sense. Okay. I think I used every kind of wrench that I have. The normal combinations, the stubbies, the flare nuts, the angles, and even these crowfoot flare nut wrenches. These are pretty handy for getting into that ABS module. Takes a lot of tools. Now we got to do a whole lot of bleeding. So I'm going to bleed them, I think, once with the pressure bleeder, and then we'll go through the ABS bleed procedure, and then we'll see where we're at. If it's still kind of squishy, we might have to do it again. Sometimes it takes a while. It says, apply and hold brake pedal to activate test. Keep foot pressure on brake pedal until test is complete. I can't bleed and hold the brake pedal, so I've got my trusty pedal prop. Should do the trick. Wish Max had longer legs. Anyway, start the test, see what she does. Okay. It's not what I expected it to do. Usually you have to open each bleeder. Not in this case, I guess. I know, Max, it's cold, isn't it? Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and bleed them again just to be sure. I did go ahead and replace all of the bleeders. And yes, I did start with the right rear wheel, the furthest from the master cylinder. I don't think it matters, but it's necessary to say that. So I'm gonna get 1,000 comments telling me you have to start with the furthest bleeder. Okay, that looks pretty good. I kind of think we're done with the brake lines. Fire it up and bleed out the power steering. Send this puppy down the road. We're done. Sorry if it was a little rushed at the end. I was trying to get it out the door before the end of the day, and I didn't quite make it. This is a big job. It took me the entire day, and actually a little bit of yesterday too. So figure 9, maybe 10 hours, and that's in a heated shop with a lift if you're doing this on your back in your driveway.
good luck. And you know, I'm a hot mess. The floor is a hot mess. But we're done. Thanks for watching.